This recipe comes together so quick. It is a one-pot pressure cooker meal. It's absolutely delicious, and I want to thank Kat for the suggestion. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today's recipe is super easy, very little prep, and it is absolutely delicious. So let's get right to it. I'm going to use the Ninja Foodi. This is the 2-lid model, 6.5 quart. You can do this in the 1-lid model. You can do this in the 8 quart. No problems, okay? So whatever pressure cooker you have, you can make this recipe. First thing we're gonna do is get the pot heated on sear saute and put in about a tablespoon of olive oil. You wanna be on high sear saute and then hit start. We're gonna let the pot heat up for about 2 to 3 minutes before we put in the olive oil. So while that's happening, let me tell you a little bit about the recipe we're making today. This is called chicken Riggies. And I had never heard of it. So if you've never heard of it, you're not alone. But it is very popular in upstate New York, and Kat, who has been a follower of mine for a while, asked me if I could turn the recipe that she loves to make into an easier version that's done all in one pot in the pressure cooker. So I said, sure, I will do that, no problems. Except for one thing, I had a super difficult time finding these hot cherry peppers. They were nowhere around me. I could not find them. So I ended up going to Nashville for another reason, obviously, and I found them in a little store. So they're hot cherry peppers. Now, you may have trouble finding them as well. Don't worry about it. If you can't find them, you can add the heat in using a little bit of red pepper flakes, or if you don't like things spicy, you can omit them altogether. However, I will say that the cherry peppers do add a certain flavor that's a little bit different than just red pepper flakes. Easier to find in most grocery stores are sweet cherry peppers that are kind of in a jar like this. They're a condiment. You can get those. Put a few of those in with a little bit of red pepper flakes and you're gonna be good to go, okay? But I was lucky enough to find them. They are delicious, but they are spicy. So I'm gonna get into how much I add and what my suggestions are for you in just a minute. All right, let's go ahead and add in our olive oil. About a tablespoon is fine, okay? And then we're gonna add in 1 to 1.5 pounds of chicken breast that are cubed up into about 2-inch pieces, okay? So just bite-sized pieces. I'm gonna put those in right now. And then I'm gonna season those with 1/2 teaspoon of fine ground sea salt, or you could use kosher salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Then we're just gonna mix those around a little bit and just get them to start to saute, okay? And brown up just a little bit. They don't have to cook all the way through. All right, we're also gonna add in some onion. Now this is diced onion. It's about 1/2 inch dice. You could do 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch dice. Either one will be fine. And this is 1/2 of a large sweet onion. You can use any type of onion you want though. You could even use a red onion, but it will change the color of the dish just a little bit. We're gonna get part of the onions in now to really bring the flavors out in the sauce. Then we're gonna add some other vegetables at the end, onions, green peppers, red peppers, to finish the dish and have a little texture, okay? So it works perfectly and it's super easy. All right, so give these a stir around and let the chicken and the onions cook for about 3 minutes or so. Then we're gonna add in some garlic. Now, how much garlic you add is up to you. I had Jeff do this for me because I hate mincing. So Jeff minced up a whole bulb of garlic and it was just a little bit over a tablespoon. No worries, I'm gonna add the whole thing in. But I'm not gonna add it in right now because I do not want it to burn. So we're gonna let this go just a minute, then we're gonna add in 4 tablespoons of salted butter. You could use unsalted butter if you want, that's no problem. I think there's enough salt in the dish that you don't have to add any more, but at the end you can always season to taste, okay? All right, the next thing I'm gonna add in, I'm not gonna add the butter in quite yet, I'm gonna add that right before I add the garlic, are those red peppers that we talked about, okay? So I just took these out of the jar. I do not have any juice in with them. A lot of times when I'm cooking with something that's a pepper and it comes in a jar and it has juice, I'll put juice in. These are a little spicy, so I didn't want to do that, okay? So just take out about 2 to 3 tablespoons, and it's kind of hard to measure, I know. Basically, I know what a cherry pepper looks like. They're about this big. So I kind of said, okay, what would 2 cherry peppers be, right? And then I added what I would consider to be about 2 whole cherry peppers. All right, so it's about 2 tablespoons. Maybe get a little bit more there. I have added up to 4. I thought 4 was a little too spicy. 4 tablespoons, quarter of a cup. Thought it was a little spicy for my taste. Jeff absolutely loved it. So use your judgment in that. You could start off with just, 1 slice of the pepper and then add more at the end if you wanted a little bit spicier. All right, let's give this a mix and we're gonna throw in that butter. And then once the butter starts to melt just a little bit, I'll add the garlic. You only need to saute that for about a minute. Then we're gonna deglaze the pot. To deglaze the pot, I'm using a half of a cup of sherry. And believe it or not, I am just using cooking sherry from the store. I've also tried the recipe with white wine and I liked the flavor of the sherry better. So you could use the cooking sherry from the store or you could buy a bottle of sherry, that's fine, just make sure it's a dry sherry. And we're gonna use half of a cup to deglaze. Now, if you did not want to use sherry, skip it and use a half of a cup of chicken stock to deglaze, okay? You're gonna need to increase the chicken stock though to 2.5 cups total so that you have the right measurements to get your pasta cooked. All right, so let that saute again for just a minute. And then we'll talk about the pasta. And there's really nothing stuck on the bottom here. I also want to mention that I used chicken thighs in one of my test batches for this. And, I love chicken thighs. I really do. But in this recipe, I preferred the chicken breast. Okay, let's talk about the pasta. I am using 8 ounces of rigatoni pasta. Rigatoni pasta is the pasta you want to use if you want to call it chicken Riggies, because that's where the name comes from. The Riggies is the rigatoni pasta. However, you could use penne if that's what you had. It's still going to be delicious. Just call it chicken penne from upstate New York or something like that. Let's talk about the measurements of the pasta, because every time I mention both volume and weight measurements in pasta, people want to correct me and tell me I'm wrong. And I'm not wrong on this anyway, okay? I've been wrong plenty of times, but on this I'm not wrong. So there's a difference between weight measurements and volume measurements, all right? So when I tell you to use 8 ounces or 2.5 cups, it's different measurements. It's 8 ounces by weight, 2.5 cups by volume, okay? So it's 2.5 cups as you put it in your measuring cup. And that will vary based on pasta shapes, okay? So 8 ounces, which is half of a pound box, so that's easy, just estimate, right? Or if you want to measure it out because you have it in bulk like I do, it's 2.5 cups, roughly, okay? All right, so we can go ahead and put the pasta in now. And our seasoning blend. Our seasoning blend is 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, and I am using Tone's Italian seasoning. You can use any Italian seasoning that you like. I thought about breaking it out into all the different components, like, the oregano and the basil and all that stuff. But it's so simple, right? And I think we all have Italian seasoning of some sort. So 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, 1 teaspoon of fine ground sea salt or kosher salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. All right, so we're gonna add that in right now. Give this all a stir around. And then we'll put in our 2 cups of chicken stock. Now remember, if you didn't use the sherry, you will have already put in 1/2 cup. You want a total of 2.5 cups of liquid. Plus the butter gives a little bit of liquid as well. Your pasta may not be all the way submerged. Don't worry about that, okay? It's gonna cook just fine. So I just kind of press it down a little bit, just like that. And then we are gonna pour 15 ounces of crushed tomatoes. I found that this is an important ingredient. I tried to use fire roasted tomatoes because, you know, I love them, right? I use them in all my recipes. I thought that's going to even make this better. Well, guess what? It did not. So crushed tomatoes, 1 15-ounce can, and we're going to pour that right on top. And don't stir. That's important, okay? There you go. Okay, that's it. Now we go under pressure. So I'm going to cancel this out here, switch over to pressure. Turn my lid, make sure the valve is sealed in the back, and it's going to be high pressure, and we're going to go to 2 minutes. It's going to take a few minutes, but not very long for the pot to come to pressure. 2 minutes is not the normal cook time for a penne or a rigatoni pasta. Usually I do 3 or 4 minutes in dishes. However, remember there's a second part to this where we're going to add in some fresh vegetables, and we need to give them time to simmer, and we don't want to overcook our pasta. So 2 minutes with an immediate release. And hit start. Okay, so when the pin drops in the back, you can safely open the lid. Do that away from you because it will be steamy. Now, of course, if you're using the 1 lid model, it's a little bit different. You lift the lid because it's only 1 lid for pressure cooking and for the air crisping. All right, so you can see it takes a few minutes for the steam to release so that the pressure is reduced in the pot. That drops the little button, then we can open the lid. It took just under 9 minutes to come to pressure. So just for planning purposes, okay? So it takes about 15, 16 minutes in the pot. Now what we want to do is switch over to sear saute on high and hit start. Okay, we are going to get these vegetables in there and simmering just for a few minutes, and then I'll also stir everything up. So what I have here is 1 red bell pepper, 1 green bell pepper, and the rest of that onion. So it's about a half of a cup of onion, so a total of 1 cup. Half already is in there. And then it's about, you know, don't worry about the size really, but it was about a little under a cup, maybe 3/4 of a cup of red pepper, and the same for the bell pepper. I know it doesn't look like that, but they are about equal. But again, don't get hung up on that. It's perfectly fine, whatever size peppers you have, and you don't even have to use all of that if you don't want to. It's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's give everything a nice stir and don't freak out, okay? It looks real soupy, doesn't it? That changes, okay? So don't worry about that. Now, simmer this. You can leave it on high for a few minutes. You can put it down to medium if you think it's boiling too much. And I would say it's going to take about 3 minutes or so for those vegetables to soften just a little bit. How soft you like them, you know, that's totally your preference. I like a little bit of crunch still, and I like the vibrant look of them when they aren't overcooked. That's why I don't put them in when I first start pressure cooking. But if you really like soft vegetables, you can put them all in the beginning. It'll be fine. You just won't have the variation in texture and the vibrant color. All right, so it's been a few minutes and I'm gonna give it 1 more stir, and now we add in some heavy cream. I use a half of a cup, and I'm just gonna add it right in. And at this point, you can turn the Ninja Foodi off because we are pretty much done cooking. It's gonna sit for a few minutes. So stir in the cream. It's still going to look kind of soupy. And then we're gonna add in some Parmesan cheese. You can see these noodles from the time they were pressure cooked to now have even plumped up more. They're going to be a really nice al dente, maybe just a little bit softer than al dente, but it works in this dish, okay? It works really well. Okay, so cheese, Parmesan cheese. This is another one that can get a little bit confusing for people. The way to measure cheese is by ounces, okay? Because that's gonna be your accurate measurement. It doesn't matter if it's in a block, if it's a block of 3 ounces, or if it's shredded finely or thickly or cubed. 3 ounces is 3 ounces is 3 ounces, okay? However, we don't all have scales, and that's not how it comes in the store, So this is about 3/4 of a cup, but it was shredded with my food processor and not by hand. So it's a little bit thicker than the Parmesan shreds I usually make. And it is 3 ounces, and that's what I'm gonna use. So when you get a bag from the store, because if you wanted to use the bag kind, you can. I prefer shredding it myself, but it's totally up to you. You're gonna wanna use about a cup or so of that shredded because it's even a little bit thicker, okay? So it's gonna take up more volume. Again, volume and weight, 2 different things. 3 ounces is gonna go in now. And I'm gonna show you that with this. I have a little rind left of the Parmesan. I should have left some of this out, but hopefully you remember. It looked almost like the size of little coconut shreds. That's what it reminded me of. Okay, stir in the cheese. The cheese is gonna melt. The peppers are still gonna soften a little bit. And now we just kind of give it about 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, you could serve it now. It's just gonna be a little bit soupier than I like to serve mine. So I just close the lid, keep it off, or you could turn it on keep warm. This one you can just turn right on keep warm and let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so let's talk about that cheese again. So I wanted to kind of show you. So this is the zester, or it could be considered a fine grater, okay? And when I grate this, it is like really tiny. So 1 ounce of cheese grated this finely can be almost a cup of cheese. 1 ounce, right? So it's still the same weight. So 3 ounces finely shredded, 3 ounces coarser shred, still the same amount, but it's gonna take up different volumes, okay? So don't go by volume alone. And guess what? It's cheese. Use as much as you want, because this is a cheesy, delicious dish that we're making. Okay, that's it. We're gonna wait for 5 minutes, and then I will put it into my bowl, give it a taste, and I'll just garnish with a little bit of fresh basil. It's been about 10 minutes, so let's take a peek. And I can already tell it has really thickened up. Look at that. It is gorgeous. Oh my gosh. All right, time to dish it out and give it a taste. Oh my gosh. And it will thicken as it sits longer, and the next day it's even thicker. In fact, you may need to add a little bit more cream to it to thin it out just a little bit. This looks amazing. Oh my gosh. Put a little bit of that Parmesan that I finely grated, and then a little bit of torn, or you could get fancy and chiffonade it, but I'm not gonna worry about that. A little bit of fresh basil on top, and then get ready to dig in. Oh, it's hot. I better let it sit for a minute. It's super hot. If anybody has a recipe that they love to make, but they find that they dirty like 14 different pans making it, let me know. Email me, louise@thesaltedpepper.com, and if I can change it to a foodie recipe, I certainly will. Okay, let's see. All right, so here's the chicken. Perfect. Still hot. It is tender, it's not chewy. So doing chicken in the pressure cooker can be a little tricky, but when you do it in liquid, it stays really moist, and the cook time is so short, it's very tender, it's delicious. All right. So I expect these to be just a tad bit over al dente. They are al dente, I think. They're delicious. If you like your noodles a little bit softer, you could always go up to 3 minutes of pressure cook time, or do a little bit of a natural release. So let it sit there. Don't release the pressure immediately. Let it sit for 5 minutes. That's all cook time, okay? So that'll soften the noodles up. It's got a nice spice. It's not overwhelming, but it's there. So again, watch those cherry peppers. If you don't like spicy food, completely omit them. And then let's get to the vegetables. Absolute perfection. This is a delicious recipe. Thank you again, Kat, for sharing it with me. And I hope everybody enjoys making it. 1 pot in your pressure cooker.